Communication skills. Yeah.
Good evening. This meeting of Monroe Township Board of Education is now called to order. Well, I'd like to ask everyone to please rise for the pledge and have our student board member, Mr. Jamal, lead us in that pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Gorski, we have roll call.
Mrs. Arminio.
Here.
Mr. Braverman.
Here.
Mrs. DeMayo.
Here.
Mr. Kaufman.
Here.
Mrs. Koloponowicz. Mr. Nostine.
Here.
Mrs. Carino.
Here.
Mr. Ryback.
Here.
Mr. Russo.
Here.
And Mr. Rutsky.
Here.
Mr. Board President, you have a quorum present this evening.
That's good.
In accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law, the Monroe Township Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted November 11th, 2016 at all schools, the Home News Tribune, Cranberry Press, and filed with the clerk of the municipality.
Thank you. We can move to approval of minutes. I'd like a motion to approve the Public Board of Education meeting of August 31st, 2016.
So move. Second.
Second, any discussion? We could vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Did I see hands for opposed? No? Okay. Abstentions? Recusals? Motion passes. A motion to approve the closed session meeting August 31st, 2016.
So move.
Do I have a second? Second. Thank you. Any discussion? We could vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? One abstention? No recusals? Okay, motion passes. I need a motion to approve the Public Board of Education meeting September 14th, 2016.
So moved.
Second, anyone?
Second.
Thank you. Okay. Any discussion? We could vote. In favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Recusals? Motion passes. And now we could move to our student board members report. Jamal?
So, not too many things to talk about today, but the first thing is that our high school football team picked up a win against Princeton, winning 38-13 a couple days ago. Another highlight is our boys soccer team made it all the way to the state semifinals before losing to Hunterdon Central, who went on to win it all. It's the best season that I think the boys soccer team has had in a while, and everybody's been very excited for their progress. And the last thing is something I found out just earlier today, actually. Our high school marching band placed 5th out of 21 bands at a national tournament, and in a couple of weeks they'll be going to Hawaii to perform in the 75th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, along with other state bands and the U.S. Marine Band. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. We have a presentation on harassment, intimidation, and bullying, HIB.
Hi, welcome. I'm Lori McConnell. I'm the district coordinator for anti-bullying.
Good evening.
My presentation is the biannual report for harassment, intimidation, and bullying. We need to present this at a public forum 2 times per year. If you look at the next slide, you'll see our first report is from January 1st through January 30th. That is period 1. January 1st through December 31st is period 2. This report is for the period 1, so that would be from January 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2016. The next slide, I'm not sure all of those you can see, but I believe the board members at least have a copy of it. It is actually the definition of bullying. I'm not going to read you the whole thing and bore you with it. It's quite extensive. But I do want to point out the first bullet. Any act of bullying has to be reasonably perceived as being motivated by an actual or perceived characteristic. We will go into what those characteristics are in further slides. Our anti-bullying specialists at each school are listed on the next slide. We have 1 in each of the elementary schools. We have 2 in the middle school and 2 in the high school. Typically in the high school and the middle school, the 2 investigators or anti-bullying specialists do investigate together whenever possible. So from January 1st through June 30th, we had 19 reports of harassment, intimidation, and bullying. 15 of those cases were founded, 4 were unfounded. When we look at the district data, this is where it gets into the protected categories. There's actually 2 slides on this. I did not fit them onto one. And you can see by category what they are. I feel like I missed one. Yeah, I'm one ahead. I'm sorry. So many, a lot were based on race, color, religion, and as you can see, 2 on sexual orientation, 1 on disability, and the other, there are other things that are included that may not be identified as one of the protected categories, but they are considered bullying. The next slide, you can see the confirmed incidents. We had 0 at Applegarth, 0 at Berkeley, 0 at Brookside, 1 at Mill Lake, 7 at the high school, 10 at the middle school, 0 at Oak Tree, and 1 at Woodland School. Seems to me we're doing pretty good. The next few slides are the breakdown by school of what protected category the incident or incidents were founded for. We had 1 for race for the middle school. We had 1 for sexual orientation. Did I miss something here? And 9 were other. For the high school, we had 5 for race, 2 for religion, 2 for sexual orientation, and 1 for disability. For Mill Lake School, there was 1 issue based on race. And for Woodland School, there was 1 issue based on disability. When we look at bullying, we usually have to impose some type of discipline, particularly if it's founded. So I wanted you to know that the discipline is really determined based upon the code of conduct. The investigators typically make a recommendation to the school principal. The superintendent also looks at that, and then they make a final determination. Whenever possible or appropriate, remediation is provided to both the offenders and the victims. We have a vast array of programs that go on in the schools to prevent bullying. As you can see in the next list, those are many of them, probably not 100% inclusive, but we try to generalize them. We also provide training for all staff and people that work within the district, and you can see the list on the next slide. That's it. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Are we finding that there are reoffenders?
Not very often, but occasionally. I would say out of those 19, and I don't have the statistic right with me, but a general one might be 2, maybe 3. Okay? Yes?
Yeah, just a comment and then a question. The comment is that when I was at the workshop, I went to a training on this HIB, and one of the interesting things that they brought out, believe it or not, was the distinguishing characteristic. And
Correct.
they ruled actually that veganism is now a distinguishing characteristic.
Really? That's
So-
fascinating to me because I have not heard that one yet.
Exactly. It was fascinating to a lot of us, and I guess,
That's where we would put it under other.
Right.
And that's where a lot of the, incidental type of things that you wouldn't, you can't possibly list everything. And that's why you saw, I think it was 9 under other, which is significant when you're looking at 19 cases.
But I guess my question is, who determines, obviously, ultimately, I think it's an administrative law judge, but I think...
You're absolutely right. That's exactly what determines it. we would probably make a recommendation to the best of our knowledge within the district, but when it's a new thing such as veganism, we might consider that a type of bullying. We'd have to look at the rest of the definition in order to determine that. Sometimes the anti-bullying specialist will contact me, I will contact our lawyer, and we'll get the best information we can at the time, but case law usually determines the final findings on that. We're pretty good about saying if we really think it's a type of bullying, it is.
And my question is, are these numbers going down? Do we plot these?
Oh my gosh, I talked to Dr. Kozak earlier this week, and I said, so far since September, we've only had 3 cases. So that's tremendous to me. I don't know, I hope it continues, so to speak. But I was very impressed with that. There's only 3 cases right now at the middle school.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask another
Yeah.
question?
I don't mean to be pessimistic, but I find it hard to believe that we've only had 5 in high school. And what are we doing to encourage students who feel they're being bullied to come forward and report it?
Well, those programs that I spoke of, let me go back to that slide. All of those programs are going forward. I'm sorry, yeah, that is the slide, correct. I keep jumping. Everyone is trained, which is very, very important, and we're very specific about that training. I meet with the anti-bullying specialist twice a year to go over this information. I have heard it particularly, I know you're speaking of the high school, but at the middle school, they're doing a lot of proactive approaches, which is interesting because they're the only ones who have had cases this year, but we know middle school students, so to speak. I can't say enough about our anti-bullying specialists and how proactive they are about trying to address these incidents. And really, the other thing we try to look at as well is really looking at the bystanders to speak up when they see an incident of bullying. And we have found that sometimes somebody thinks somebody's their best friend and they'll stick up for the other person, so that's a good thing.
Kids may not come forward because they feel it might aggravate the situation and make it worse, and,
That does happen, I think but if you look back to the law, it is our responsibility, even if a kid does not want to come forward, if we get any kind of report, if we believe it is a type of bullying, it is our responsibility to conduct an investigation. So regardless, even if the student says, no, I don't want to do it, we still have to do it. That's part of the law. Okay? Yeah.
Race seems to be one of the higher reported issues. How are we handling that within the district? I mean, I know you said we're going through all these things, but is it serious? Is anyone getting hurt, or the degree to which that these things are?
All of last year, and I did look at all of these, but I can't remember off the top of my head. There was only one, I think, fairly serious issue last year. There was one at the high school. There was one that I was pretty disappointed with at Woodland School, and that was based on disability. And the one at the high school that I'm thinking of had to do with sexual identity or gender identification. They're usually not, they're just, I hate to say this because I don't ever want to minimize this, but a lot of times it's kids just being obnoxious and rude and, not thinking before they say or do something. And that's where the remediation is so important with these kids. I didn't really mean to say that, blah, blah, blah. And I don't mean to, because I really don't. I'm not minimizing it in any way, shape, or form. So I don't want you to think that. We take it very, very seriously. And most of them, as I said before, are not repeat offenders because they know this is it. You're done.
So programs tend to work.
They really, really do. And I think evidence of that is the fact that we've only had 3 so far this year.
Let's hope it stays like
Yes,
a low number.
I know, I keep saying, everybody knock on wood.
Thank you for your efforts.
No problem.
Anyone else? Let me thank you for the presentation.
No problem.
Okay, well, we can move on to committee reports. Any committee chair? Mr. Kaufman.
So we had a curriculum meeting this evening. We had really just 3 agenda items. One was to approve art discussions,
Art applications.
art applications, and that's at the middle school, correct?
Yes, seventh
Okay.
grade.
We also spoke about the new criteria and new requirements that are going on in the student-teacher arena. Spoke a little bit about some of the new requirements relative to videotaping the instruction, and I think we're going to go back and keep looking at what we can do to tighten up our requirements around that, and also protect the identity of our kids, protect the identity of our school, and de-identify all information that's humanly possible. And we also had an intro to a gentleman who is looking to come into the district. He's one of our residents, to provide some business related type of pilot/club/course. We're going to talk, this was really just the first intro to that, and we're going to discuss this at future curriculum meeting, at least the next one in December, to figure out exactly what the program is going to look like. Very interesting gentleman. He has a lot of business background and looking to spend a lot of his time working with our students to try and bring some business-related type of activities directly to our kids. So I think, I don't want to speak for the whole committee, but we all felt that the idea was very good. I think we just have to kind of vet through the logistics and the, if you will, red tape to make sure that we do it the right way so that we can do this more and make sure that we are doing everything we possibly can to, protect our programs, protect our children, and vet everything from soup to nuts. So more at the next board meeting.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Kaufman?
It just seems to me that we have a lot of after-school activities, clubs that are duplicated. And one of the clubs that we support is DECA. DECA has all the business components, and we spend thousands of dollars on that a year, sending the kids to conferences, et cetera, et cetera. Don't you think you'd be duplicating that?
That's a great question. Came up at the meeting, and that's going to be part of the second meeting that we're going to have to talk about, well, how does DECA, FBLA, some of the other stuff that we already have, what's the net new for this program? So more to come. Good question.
Any other questions? Any other committee chair? Mr. Notstein.
Thank you. The Finance Committee had a meeting last evening. First up on the agenda was the budget update. Mr. Gorski and Dr. Kozak informed the committee that we're currently have started the budget defense rounds, and that the enrollment growth is really starting to it's really starting to impact every single department and discipline, demanding more and more resources. Additional staffing needs driven by increased class sections is a requirement, as is additional support staff. So it's starting to creep in now, and we're starting to really be under the gun. Second up on the agenda item was a letter of intent, discussion, and update. Dr. Kozak and Mr. Gorski informed the committee of recent meeting with Mayor Tamburo, whereas they learned that the proposed letter of intent will not be considered by town council. If you recall, last meeting, we actually passed a resolution proposing to go ahead with the site study on Church Road, but the board felt it prudent at that point in time to suggest that we go with a letter of intent to make sure that we actually were going to get the land. Now, that letter of intent will not be provided by the township. The committee agreed, although not unanimously, to recommend the board to amend the resolution made at the last meeting to include no letter of intent requirements. Many committee members expressed disappointment in the town council's perceived punitive reaction to comments by Board of Education member. Item 3 was land broker services. We agreed that we need to engage in a multi-pronged attack to our problem of overbuilding, and the administration presented the need that we're going to engage a land broker service to facilitate with the option of exploring and procuring land as part of a referendum in the future. Also, the architecture of record use for student growth consideration. The committee agreed to recommend to the board a resolution, which is on the agenda tonight, expanding the scope of the architect of record services to include exploring existing facilities for expansion and options with the aged Applegarth facility stage replacement. Additionally, on item 4, demographer study update, the committee agreed with the administration's recommendation for an upgrade to the demographer report for a cost negotiated down from $15,000 to $5,000. That concludes my report, Mr.
Thank you. Any question for Mr. Notstein? Any other committee chair? Mr. Braverman.
We discussed the wetlands that the township almost gave to us. It's a ditto to the Finance Committee. The other things that we discussed was the tennis courts. They'll be finished when the weather gets warmer. There might be some addition to our bleachers as well as a replacement. And we are going to have a contract with the, or an update of the contract for the groundskeepers. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Braverman. Any question for Mr. Braverman? Ms. Arminio.
In the minutes of the August 31st, meeting, there was mention about the additional cost for the tennis courts for about $46,000. And I am reported as having mentioned that we were going to seek reimbursement from the township because that was their original agreement with the board, that they would supply the costs up front for the tennis courts. So have we had any additional, I know we requested, I think it was a verbal, can we put it in writing or have we gotten an answer?
I can answer you on that.
Oh, okay.
The request has been denied, and as far as the reason, I suggest that you ask the town.
The township. Because actually, the $300,000 that was agreed upon was contingent on the Board of Education waiving the $30,000 of cost from the municipal budget for a 10-year period. So it seems to me that really just getting a loan, not an actual payment for it. And again, anything that we have to take out for the school district budget is taking out for educational purposes and instructional purposes, and maybe even a teacher or a para or something. So I'm disappointed that that agreement didn't go fully as a reimbursement. Thank you.
Mr. Braverman?
Michelle, yes. I don't understand what you said about the $30,000.
Well, there was part of the reason why we got $300,000 up front was because we waived, as a board, we waived for the Arts Commission.
I don't think that's what the contract says that we have with them.
Mr. President? Yes.
You can correct me.
Mrs. Arminio is correct. The board reclassified the Mighty Oaks and the Mayor's Cultural Arts Commission to be Tier 1 users exempt from the use of building fees. And that was historically about $30,000 a year. That was in exchange for the township providing $300,000 for the tennis court restoration.
However, if we want to get out of that contract, we have to pay them back the $300,000, not less what we anticipate it might have cost us, them.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, there is language in the exact contract for what would happen if there was a dissolution of the contract.
So it's not $30,000 against the $300,000. they're not getting a credit each time they use the place.
No, it's true.
It's $300,000. We're in the hole for it if we ever want to get control of our facilities again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we can move on to the public forum. Now, this public forum addresses only items on the agenda. You'll have 3 minutes to make your statement or ask your questions, whether you use 3 minutes or less than 3 minutes if necessary. That's the time you have. I ask that you will, if you have multiple questions, you ask all your questions so you can get it into the time. And we will, if possible, answer your questions now or get back to you or take your statement under advisement. When you come up, please state your name and your address and direct your questions to me. Anyone from the public wishing to address the board on the agenda? Yes, sir, come on up. Good evening.
Good evening, Prakash Parab from Monroe Township. Page 16, item number 7, for the feasibility, I see the cost per rate per hour. Like to know what is the total cost involved in that. I see the rate per hour, but like to know what is the total cost.
That resolution on page 16, number 7, authorizes the board and its administration to utilize and expand upon the services of the board architect of record to facilitate the board with planning for a referendum to handle student enrollment and aging facilities. And at this time, that scope has not been yet determined what avenue we're going to go into. It could be additions to 1 or 2 schools if the 65-acre parcel of land that's being considered to be donated is feasible for 1 or 2 buildings to be put on there. It could expand further, and it could also include a study on a staged replacement of Applegart School. So we cannot give you a definitive range on those fees at this time, but because we're still too early in the exploratory part of this.
Okay, but we will have you will evaluate and you will get the cost. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
When and if the district engages the professional in these areas of looking at additions to the schools or the study of Applegart School, will be presented to Building Grounds Transportation, and the bill would be put on the monthly bill list when their percentage of completion is finished.
Anthony Prezioso, way to question your way. Michael, what's the $46,000 for, the extra $46,000? It was my understanding that we had an estimate.
Yes.
And we
yes.
had it all laid out that we were going to pay a certain amount, the $300,000
That's
for
correct.
the courses, and now it's
That's correct. The history on this is the school district attempted over a few years to get the restoration of the tennis courts into the school district budget. And for a multitude of reasons, it never stayed and never made it through the defense rounds cuts and never made it into the budget because of other priorities. Former superintendent even applied for a ROD grant to the Department of Education where 40% of the cost could have been reimbursed, but it was denied. We attached that to the curriculum and the gym class, which uses the courts, but the Department of Education denied it. So we requested from the township at the directive of the Building Grounds Transportation Committee to seek reimbursement for the costs of the restoration of the tennis courts. And at the time, the only estimate that we had from the architect was $300,000 for the complete restoration of both sets of courts. The township agreed, as we discussed before, when they were, the cultural arts and the Mighty Oaks were reclassified to a Tier 1 exempt fee user. And they gave us a check for $300,000. Procurement laws require the school district to go out to bid for the services of the restoration of the courts. And the low bid, well, the first time it was bid, the bids came in so high it had to be all rejected. We rebid the project the second time, and we had a bid of approximately $346,000. So we were $46,000 short. So at the request of the board, administration contacted the township and said it was your intent to pay for the tennis court restoration. The bid came in a little bit higher. Would you be willing to reimburse us the additional $46,000 that it's going to be required to refurbish the courts? And as Mr. Rybeck said, the request was denied.
Thank you.
According to the contract, though, that's ironclad, correct? I guess our lawyer looked at the contract.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chrissy Skirby, 21 Prickness Drive. Just looking at the enrollment numbers, and I just wanted to point out that we have 109 new students district-wide since the close of the end of the school year. There are 36 new students to Oak Tree, 43 to Applegarth, 87 at the high school since June, and 18 at the Monroe Township Middle School. My question is, what are we going to be doing in the interim to alleviate the massive amount of students coming into the district, even before the 2 large condo townhouse developments are up?
Right now, as I reported last month, even with the influx of students, we are trying to keep our class sizes as low as we can. So our average class size at Applegarth is a little high, is at 26. Barclay Brook is at 22, 23 for Brookside, 23 for Mill Lake, 22 for Oak Tree, and 24 for Woodland. So as these students come in, we're going to continue to evaluate and monitor the students coming in. If we need to, as certain developments, townhouse developments open up, we may need to look to send the new students to some of the schools where our enrollment has gone down.
Okay, you didn't mention the high school or the middle school. The average class size at the middle school is 34, 35. There's a class with 36.
Yeah, I don't know if the average is quite that high, but you're right. There are some class sizes that are larger.
And that's the same at the high school. Are you aware, Dr. Kozak, that at the middle school, they have rotating schedule for when the tables are called to go and buy their lunch? Some students, if it's their day to be called last, they have 2 minutes to get their lunch, sit down and eat. And on the majority of those days, they have to throw away their food that they haven't even had a chance to eat and go back to class. How is that acceptable?
Well, first of all, I am aware that they rotate tables to eat lunch, and that's a normal procedure in any given middle or high school. As far as students only having 2 minutes, I will certainly have to take that up with Ms. Chanley. I have not heard that students are throwing away their lunches. Ms. Chanley is, however, working on a schedule to look at ways to provide more time for students to eat. But I have not yet heard of any students that only have 2 minutes to eat lunch.
It's all over social media. If you check out any of the Monroe Township Middle School parent Facebook pages, that is a constant complaint by parents so that their children are coming home from school, they've had 2 minutes to eat because it was their turn to go last, and it's unacceptable. Mrs. Chanley is doing an absolutely wonderful job at the middle school trying to handle this. She's out of room. She's completely out of room, and it's not fair. Will you consider doing something next year to help alleviate the overcrowding?
Yes.
What?
If you want to send your question to me in an email, I can give you a more detailed answer.
You can't tell us today what the plan is?
If I can, I just, when I started, I asked everyone if they would state all their questions or make their comment in advance, and that we will answer if possible and get back to you. So I will ask you if you would either email Dr. Kosak, and he'll get back to you with that.
Okay, so we have no plan.
Thank you.
All right. So on page 15, under board action item, the pre-referendum planning. I was at the meeting when the board passed this resolution. It took a very long time to come up with the wording, and it was discussed at length why we should have a commitment letter from the township before we start spending money surveying the land. Now, it was said that the town council will not give us the letter of intent. I went back and watched the last several town council meetings. It's never been discussed at any town council meeting. So when you say it's the town council, has anybody spoken to the president of the town council? Because you keep saying you've spoken to the mayor. Has anybody spoken to the town council?
Well, let me answer that. Yeah, we're getting short of time. I'll answer it as briefly as I can, and if it's not good enough, we could speak later. The mayor was telling us he was going to be speaking with the town council.
The town council makes decisions like you,
Yeah.
as a
Well, let me
board, at
finish.
open
Let me-
public
let me-
meetings.
let me
They've not
finish.
discussed giving us a
Scurvy,
letter of intent.
I know they haven't. I know they haven't. And the mayor's comment to us was that they were not going to have on the agenda a letter of intent. However, he guaranteed us orally that he was going to, the town was going to give us the transfer the title of 65 acres to the school district.
So have you spoken to the president of the town council?
I have not spoken to the president of town council because I was told it will not be on the agenda.
So
And
the council hasn't discussed it at their meetings. They won't put it on their agenda, but you can say 100% that the mayor
The mayor
is
has
agreeing
told,
that the council will give the Board of
the
Education.
mayor has told us that the town will be deeding over the 65 acres to us,
Based on what? They haven't discussed it.
based on his word as the mayor. I see no reason
But
why.
that's not his decision,
I
correct?
see no reason why we shouldn't believe what he said.
Well, he also said he would be giving us a letter of intent.
My suggestion is that maybe you want to bring those questions to him.
No, I'm bringing it to you because
I'm
you want to,
answering-
you're
I'm
asking this
answering you.
board to take away a portion of the resolution that you passed contingent that you were going to get this letter before you spent money.
And
now you're asking the board to go back on that.
In our discussion, I'm sure you've heard it, in our discussion, we felt that we have to pursue the engineering report. Not having this letter of intent prevents us from pursuing this engineering report, and the mayor of this town insisted that we will be getting the 65 acres. So we felt it was
Without the
prudent-
approval of the
it
town
was prudent.
council.
Maybe they will, but as of now, it's not on the agenda for them.
Well, I urge the
Not the
board
letter
to
of
really
intent.
consider sticking with the resolution that you took a very, very long time crafting and making sure that we have serious commitment from the town council, not just the mayor's word, before you start spending any more of our taxpayer money researching land. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the town? Okay, Mr. Pelori. I'm going to just request again that if you're coming up to speak, please have your questions in advance, so you can speak to us in advance, and then when you're finished, we can respond, as long as it's within that 3-minute time period. Go ahead, Mr. Pelori. Well, good
Thank you
evening.
very much. Andy Pelori, 16 St. James Street, Monroe. I think it's pretty clear from the previous speaker who came up here that there's a sense of frustration in the community in terms of lack of housing of our students, and I hope you guys hear that loud and clear. Yes, my daughter does come back at 2:30 and has a lunch at home. So that's a normal practice. A couple of questions on page number 15, item number 5. It says that you're engaging Brinkerhoff Environmental Services to do wetland delineation and habitat study. Goes back to the same question Chrissy brought up. You don't even have the site. Why are we keep spending money on a site that we're not even sure if we have it, if that's even feasible? Can we first establish having the site before we spend any more money on doing tests at this location?
Are you finished with your question?
Okay, second question is, I think one of my friends here brought up the question about the hourly rates, and I think Mr. Groski answered by saying that once the task orders or the scope is defined, then the approvals will go in place. So the question is that would the board and the public get a chance to see before you approve the specific tasks that come out of this agreement with the DI Group Architecture LLC? And the third question is, on page 17, item number D, there's a $9.78 million that need to be ratified by the board. Do we know what those costs are associated with? And I plead ignorance because I missed the last meeting. If there is already discussed, I didn't mean to waste your time, but if not, I would like to see what the $9.78 million is attributed to. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me address your first one. No matter what land we're looking at, we have to do an engineering report before we go ahead and consider purchasing it or putting it into a referendum. So that's, so we need to go ahead with this property to find out if it's viable for us. But before anything, whether it be this property or some other property, we still have to do an engineering report.
I completely understand it. Being an engineer for 32 years, I think I know that's the process. But the question really is that you already engaged somebody to do, I believe, environmental studies. Did the report come back, and does this seem like even a viable thing to invest more into this? That's the question, really.
What we found out was that there is some environmental concerns, more than we originally anticipated, but we don't know really to what extent until that engineering report comes back with more depth.
So my suggestion is that we wait engaging the Brinkerhoff Environmental until we get the report to see if the site is visible for more money to be invested into this site. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Okay. Second question, did you have a second question, Mike?
Thank you. Evening, Mr. Pluri. The second question, as I stated before, the administration, if this resolution is successful, authorizing the expansion of the scope of the architect of record to consider additions to existing Monroe School facilities or a renovation and replacement of Applegarth School, all of those items would be brought and fully explained and presented to the Building Grounds Transportation Committee, as it will also be presented on an installment basis on the monthly bill list, which was your number 3 question. The item that you referred to was the sum of the monthly bill list for the Board of Education, which is required to be approved by the Board of Education before these disbursements can be released. The checks are prepared in my office and awaiting Board of Education approval. These are for budgeted items that have been satisfied and that we have complete and proper paperwork substantiating them. The sum of this month's monthly bill list, including all of the appropriations for payroll, is $9,782,505.22.
Thank you, Mr. Groski. Thank you.
Mr. Board President, welcome back.
Thank you.
Good to see your face. Just a couple of quick questions, and then if you could just kindly answer them. Last month, Mr. Gorski was very confident in the passing of the resolution. He said it was a done deal, and that the Township Council would be approving it eminently. During that guidance is what passed that resolution. There was a very much an adamant tone in the council meeting to pass the resolution on this done deal in the Township Council. So my question to the board is, why is there no longer any due diligence in light of now this not being a done deal to challenge this resolution or to challenge the proposed amendment to this resolution? That's my first question. Secondly, one of the reasons, the impetus for the resolution moving forward was that it was deemed from Mr. Tagg's testimony last month, he was here present, Mr. Ryback, he said that there were potentially woodland turtles as defined by the NJDEP and other regulatory agencies that look after it. And the migratory season for the woodland turtles would be ending early fall. And so it's extremely important to get this environmental study in to not further delay the potential acquisition of land or the potential build of land. That migratory season for woodland turtles has now closed. The next migratory season for woodland turtles is now mid-spring into early summer. So I'm not sure how you can have a full impact study from the funds you're looking to disperse if that season is closed. So I'd like to understand if that's been taken into consideration. Thirdly, what we've come to realize is that there's a lot of studying going on this land, and the township has not necessarily given you a letter of intent, and it's currently owned by a private developer. So I'm not quite sure who's giving you, as a board, the authorization to allow these environmental agents that you're hiring as an entity onto yourselves as a Board of Education. So I'd like clarification as to who has approved and given the board authorization to hire an environmental company to study land that does not belong to the town, but still isn't under the auspices of a private developer that's a publicly traded company. Thank you.
Finished. Let me start with the third one. We were told by the mayor that this property will be forthcoming to us and that we will be able to do these environmental studies. He's obviously in speaking with Toll Brothers, who I believe owns that property now.
That's correct.
Has no problem with us doing this environmental study.
And Board President, just to be clear, so have you been in contact with Toll Brothers, or are you just going on hearsay from the mayor?
Let me ask you, your time is up, so
Sure,
now it's my
please.
time, okay? We're dealing with the mayor of the town. I see no reason to disbelieve what the mayor's telling us, so, you know, in our discussions, we're going forward with that one. Let me move to your first question, was, Mr. Gorski, you have it there?
I believe the first question referred to the resolution and the one requesting an amendment of the Brinkerhoff Environmental Services.
Okay. You talk about the letter of intent, obviously.
And Mr. Ryback, I know you weren't here last month, so I'm not sure if you read the minutes, but there was a very animated conversation at the board, and,
Yes,
and
I
Mr.
saw
Gorski's
it.
comments were very well documented.
Okay. Let's talk about the letter of intent. Without that letter of intent, we can't begin this, we can't pursue, rather, or complete the environmental study, which we need to do, as I just said, no matter what land we're doing. This land, if we could get one or hopefully two schools on it, would be financially very advantageous to this district. It also, I think, is advantageous for the town. The town is going to get this land from Toll Brothers as part of a cluster agreement. They have to turn it over to them. When they turn it over to the town, if the town does nothing with it, no taxes are being collected on it. If they turn it over to us and we're able to use it, then we're saving the taxpayers a few $1 million by not having to go out and purchase land. And we could use it to build schools, which is greatly needed. So
and Mr.
we need
Ryback, just for
let me finish, Mr.
Yeah, please, go
Allison.
ahead. Please
no,
go
no,
ahead.
no.
Please go
I'm
ahead.
finishing.
Yeah.
You had your time.
Sure.
You're done.
Mr. Ryback, just for the public record.
Mr. Albertson, please.
Yeah, but
I'm
for the public
talking-
record, you've changed the rules tonight, just so we're clear.
It's my prerogative to do that.
I'm just making a statement.
Okay, and that's it. You're done making statements. So we found it advantageous in our conversations, I think, if the board decides to go this way tonight, to rescind this letter of intent so that we can complete an engineering report and make a educated decision as to where we're going to put a building and what would fit. The next question, did you want to?
Woodland turtles.
Sure. First, for a matter of record, I did state at the last meeting that the letter of intent was forthcoming.
Yes.
And that came on direct advice from the mayor.
Right.
An event occurred that led the township to retract that offer, and the letter of intent now is off the table. So for full disclosure, that's what happened with that. There's a few resolutions on.
Are you willing to clarify why there was, what this event was?
Whoa, I have the floor, sir.
Mr. Albertson, you had your time, you had your questions, we're responding. I really don't want you interacting now. That's it.
I'll defer to the next public open then.
Fine, thank you.
There's a few resolutions on the business administrator's report this evening that all went through the Finance Committee and were also discussed at last night's Building Grounds Transportation Committee. The first one is to amend the resolution previously passed prohibiting the engagement of a habitat study until we get the letter of intent. As we've learned that the letter of intent will not be forthcoming now, which we did not have at the last meeting, in order for the district to proceed with the exploration of the land in a timely manner, it was determined by the committee and certainly recommended by administration to amend that resolution of the board with the information now that the letter of intent is not forthcoming, so that we can still do our due diligence on the land. And that includes a habitat study for the turtles, which, by the way, can still be conducted in a timely manner. That's why the reso is on tonight. And number two, also to engage in with the the engineering study, so that we can determine the extent of the wetlands and the feasibility of the land at all. Because as of right now, we have an idea that we can at least build one school on that property. Maybe we can build two, or it might be possible if the wetlands are expanded with the turtles, that it might not be feasible at all, or the remediation costs might be prohibitive. So, you know, as we discussed at the committee level, knowledge is power. That's why we're proceeding with all of these. In addition to that, there's a resolution to do an updated demographic study and also to engage in a land search, because if the exploration of the 65 acres proves that it's not suitable for school building purposes, we will need another immediate avenue to turn to. So that's why all of these are co-joined and priority tonight, and they are the administration's recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Doug Poy, 4 Tamarack Road. It seems to me that the whole issue of the land on Old Church Road is holding up progress in terms of dealing with our building needs. I was on the Student Growth Advisory Committee. I know the committee, as well as the administration, has recommended that we have one big referendum. But I think in that quest to have one big referendum, we're getting caught up, and back in the summer, we talked about we needed to move ahead, and I really don't think we're any farther ahead than we were back in July. I would urge the board to reconsider how you may want to approach this referendum. I think you may need to go for smaller referendums. You already have the land for the high school. The high school needs to be expanded, so why not move forward on that? I believe, but I could be mistaken, I believe that there is sufficient land over between where the playing fields are and the middle school. By relocating a couple of the playing fields, particularly the varsity baseball field, if you relocate that field, which would be relatively inexpensive compared to going out and buying new land somewhere else, you could build a multi-story grade 5-6 building on that land. That building would serve the entire township's needs, not simply one section of the township. It's clear that the middle school is really under pressure. If you build a 5-6 building simultaneously with the addition to the high school, you would then be able to lower the present population in the middle school and lower the population in all the elementary schools by taking grade 5 out of those schools. You might then find that you don't need 2 new elementary schools. You might even find that you don't need another elementary school. But if you did need another elementary school, I would propose that there is either sufficient land on the Applegarth property or even sufficient land at the Oak Tree property to build another elementary school. There is a baseball field at the Oak Tree School which is rarely used. That belongs to the district. So why not build a multi-story elementary school behind the Oak Tree School, and it doesn't take up as much land, and you can have whatever you need without, I know you had a concern about having an overly large elementary school. We'll have 2 elementary schools on that property if you needed to. But I think you need to move ahead with resolving the issue of what's going on in the high school and what's going on in the middle school. You're getting held up with this whole question of, do we have the land, do we not have the land, and are we going to have to go out and find land somewhere else? You need to move forward, in my opinion. And I think you need to consider a different referendum and a different approach to the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foy. Anyone else from the public? Hi, good evening.
Good evening, Board President. Welcome back.
Thank
I'd
you.
like to wish a happy Thanksgiving, or early Thanksgiving to the board.
And to you as well.
Stephen Manfree, 12 Belmont Court. Two questions and a statement. First, is there any precedent for us to be studying land or having feasibility studies that we don't own?
Why don't you ask all your questions?
That's the first question. Second question, are we doing similar studies with any land that we do own? And the last statement, you, Board President, had referred to the land, the 65 acres, as economically advantageous. I think I have a different opinion. I think it's environmentally reckless, and it ignores what is the pressing problem right now as our enrollment balloons, and there is just a perception amongst the public, real or perceived, that this board doesn't have a plan to address it. I think at some point in the very near term, the public, whether it's at this forum or someplace else, is going to have to hear some detailed plans on what this board intends to do to address the problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I can address, certainly answer some of your questions if you'd like to hear them now. The first one pertaining to the land and the engineering and the environmental studies, we need to know what we're dealing with. We don't know if that land is buildable because of whatever, how many wetlands, how big the wetlands, we have turtles. We need to know that. As far as it being economically advantageous, if we could build a school on that land and not have to purchase the land, that's what I'm talking about. But still, we need to look, what we're doing tonight is opening up avenues so that we could still do land searches, because we could find land someplace else that, after all is said and done, is buildable and more economically advantageous than the 65 acres. But we won't know that unless we're able to do all these studies. So that's why, that's what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, the first question, though, was, is there precedent for us doing this sort of land study with land that we don't own?
We need to have this all information to submit to the state if we're going to be doing a bond referendum. We have to have all this done.
Mr. Ryback, I appreciate you educating me on the process, but again, the question is, what is the precedent for this board to conduct a feasibility study on land that we don't own? Have we ever done it before? Yes or no?
The answer to that is yes. The board has done it before. When we built this high school, there was a great exploration of this piece of land, as well as another piece of land where it was originally proposed before the district owned it. The Department of Education requires that when you submit a project for a referendum, that it has a detailed plan for acquiring land by the time you have the referendum. So you don't have to own the land first. And it is incumbent upon the board to study the land, of course, which was a requirement of the Department of Education before you can proceed with it. And
So it did happen before when we built this high school.
There was a precedent, a very similar circumstance. And are we studying land that the district owns in a similar capacity? And the answer to that is yes. The district does own some other land. Some of it was mentioned previously. It's in back of the middle school. The majority of that is wet. It was previously studied and determined to have been wet. But all of the land that the district owns, our whole inventory will be studied, partially with the resolution that we have on tonight with the architect.
Okay, all right, so that's helpful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else in the public? Ms. Kerr, before you come up, I just want to make sure, anyone else who did not speak before? Okay.
Giuseppe Bonjovi, 49 Jagelski Road. I just have a general question on how estimates are taking, because you guys mentioned that it would be an estimate of $300,000 to fix the tennis courts, and then now you guys are going for $346,000 that you guys would need based on the bid you guys received. And then I guess another question would be is how is the bid process done? Do the companies come to you? Do you like put a general like ad out and then companies come to you, or do you go to individual companies that specialize in doing construction type of work, and do you get estimates from them?
Yeah, excellent questions. In the first instance, the board had asked the architect of record, who was approved by the board with that varying fee structure that you have in the agenda tonight, to put together an estimate of what it would cost to renovate both sets of tennis courts on Schoolhouse Road. At that time, the cost for renovation was $300,000. We paid the architect for his services, put it in the budget, it got cut from the budget. We tried a couple subsequent years again to put it in the budget, it got cut for other priorities because we didn't have the cap room. And then the state denied our application for a ROD grant to get reimbursement from the state. So we just could not get it accomplished through the budgetary means with the other priorities in the budget. So then the township offered to pay it based upon that previous architect estimate of $300,000. But we're required to go out to public bid any expense that's over $40,000. So this project obviously is estimated to be more than that. So we put together bid specifications on what the project entails. They were advertised for a period required by law. We also solicited bids from companies that were reputable in tennis court restoration and that type of construction to track them to bid through this fair and open process. The first time we did it, the bids came in very high. As Mr. Tate said, because it was perhaps a bad time of year when there was a lot of other construction work. So this was not attractive for the bidders, so they came in high. The second time we bid it, the low bid was $347,000 approximately. Difference is the time and the increase in construction costs from the first time the architect gave us an appraisal to what the actual cost came in at. So we were found short.
Okay, if I'm allowed one more follow-up question, when was the estimation done?
Actually, you know what? I really asked everyone to get their questions in. Okay, so if there's any further question, would you please email it to the district?
You don't know what year they did the estimation?
It's just a matter of the process today.
You guys said something. I gotta know now that you brought it up.
We'll tell you when you contact us. You can email us. I just want to keep it consistent.
I don't know if I have email. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry. We'll see them after the meeting.
All right.
Thank you.
This is the first time I'm coming to the meeting. I'm a bit confused.
Just state your name.
Yeah, Prakash Parab. You should ask name for others also who are coming. I have not heard that. Okay? Be consistent. The land, 65 acres, I'm just confused. It belongs to the town and it belongs to the Toll Brothers. What mayor is talking to whom? We, in public, want to know which land you all are looking at, 65 acres, and before you spend any money on feasibility, we want to understand it in the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Kirby?
Chrissy Skirby, 21 Preakness Drive. On page 16, number 8, it talks about the Ross Haber updated demographics study. When we met with you, Dr. Kozak, the DEC group, the presidents of the PTO and PTAs in October, you said you had recently gotten an updated study. Is this another study, or is this to pay for that study?
Mr. President? Yes. Okay. We received a study from Ross Haber probably 6 months or more ago, and that would be the only study I would be referring to. This is to get an update that with buildings that have occurred or that have started.
Oh, okay, because you told us you had just recently gotten an update. Okay. And I would just like to say to the board to really look at all the money that's being asked of you to give control over to Dr. Kozak. I did attend the Buildings and Grounds and Transportation Committee meeting last night, and I was very, very upset as a taxpayer and a parent to hear Dr. Kozak ask for, quote, the shackles to be removed from his arms, and asked for unlimited spending and for trust in the board to do what he thinks is responsible. I'm glad Mr. Braverman addressed that, and I really hope this board will make a sound decision tonight with all this money that's being asked of you to be given. Thank you.
Dr. Kozak, I think you want to respond.
Sure, I'd just like a quick response. No one is giving me money. So, clarifying, you had your question. The money is being offered, not money, but the ability to acquire the services on behalf of the administration to look at other land, to look at, have an architect, look at possible additions to the building. So it's not me personally. Let's just get that clear. And we did discuss that with the committee, and all cost, any money that is spent, is accounted for to the board on a monthly basis, as Mr. Gorski talked about earlier, through our bill statement or through any or other processes. But the board is well aware of any money that is spent, and myself, Mr. Gorski, Dr. Alwick, we all stay in close communication with the board on anything that is appropriated. Thank you.
Exactly,
All right,
but that was a
thank-
terrible comment to say, take the shackles off and let me
Thank you,
do what
Mrs.
I need to do.
Mrs. Kirby, thank you. Anyone else who hasn't gone?
My name is Rong Chen, 5 Belmont Court. Just hearing the discussion for the school land, gentleman mentioned that the high school, the middle school, the Apple Gardens, the Oak Tree School, the district already own, and they, however, we are talking basically the discussion spending money for the land the township doesn't own yet, let alone the school district. My puzzle is that what's the reason we spend money on studying the land the township doesn't even own, let alone the district, other than the school, the school in the back of the middle school, the elementary school, the district already own. What's the thought process? What's the decision, is made based on what kind of consideration?
Well, we addressed already the reasons for us going forward with the environmental study on that land. It's based on what the mayor has told us emphatically, that it will be transferred to us. As far as what we're doing, one of the things that we're doing today is, if it passes, is giving us the authority to go out and do studies with architects to find out, and engineers to find out what we can do with the current buildings, so that, and if we are able to look at other lands as well, so that we can make decisions. We need this information to to inform our decisions. We just can't make decisions sitting around a table if we don't know whether the land is buildable, whether a building can be expanded, what might be uncovered if an old building that was built in the 1930s is expanded. Will it impact, with the fields behind the building, are they buildable, or are there environmental problems there? So we need to have this all down so we can make an informed decision.
I understand that, but what is still possible to me is that because it sounds like you prefer using this piece of land, 65-acre.
Well, let me, I think I know where you're going with this, and right now, it's a very viable option for us because there's no cost. However, if our resolutions pass tonight, we will be looking at other lands, because as I said a few minutes ago, it may be more advantageous for us to purchase land elsewhere than accept this land from the town. But we won't know that unless we're able to do land search, we're able to do engineering reports on the land.
Do we still need to do land research or land research for the property in the back of the schools, existing schools that the district already own?
We need to do any kind of engineering environmental studies before we can go further with any kind of decision on expanding a school or building something. We still have to do those studies.
Yeah, the other thing
I just want to ask, I had asked everyone to please ask their questions in
Oh, okay,
advance.
no, okay,
So,
sorry.
we can't keep going back and forth like this.
Right, but this is related question. Because, it seems like, we hear from the mayor that, the district will get the land, right? It's like almost sure thing, 100%, 99%. But, it is something that on the promise verbally. If we hear from an investment advisor, okay, your $1,000 will become $20,000 in 5 years, we base on our decision on some prospective, future, but not really concrete. It's all based on the market or anything, like a lot of factors that may change the whole picture.
I don't think it would be a prudent decision politically or economically for the town to not give us this property, but just sit with it. It's got to be going to them because of a cluster agreement, so Toll has to give it to them. If they don't give it to us, when we have to go out and buy other property, that money's got to come from tax money, from the residents. So it's not a really prudent decision not to offer us that land. I think it's advantageous for them to do that.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, there are two choices: 65 acre or purchase new land. The existing school, the back of the school.
We're still looking. We're going to be working with architects if the resolution's passed to find out about other options using our current buildings.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alves, before you come on, I just want to make sure, if anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hello, Ram Rangnath, 6 Owens Drive. Again, congratulations to all the new members who are here. Hope that this will really make the conversations and decisions much more fluid. I guess I missed the last meeting. I've been here for the last few meetings, and really I'm surprised now hearing the town, does not really have the land. I thought it was just of it being deeded to the Board of Education, and so I'm very surprised. I just feel that seems like, as a risk manager, a very slippery slope and probability seems dimmer and dimmer to me. And as many of the people have asked, and I hope your resolution gets passed, I think what you're hearing loud and clear from people is that let's be very careful in wasting more time searching for other land. We know there is land next to Applegarth, land next to Oak Tree. I think the high school, obviously, can we aggressively pursue those? And then second, I think as some members suggested, can we split up instead of going for this Holy Grail referendum, go with smaller chunks, because we are all getting concerned that time is passing by, and I guess we are encouraging, can we take that kind of aggressive parallel look and move that forward?
Everything you said will be taken under advisement, and thank you.
Thank you.
Good points. I think that's it for anyone who hasn't spoken. Mr. Alverson.
Thank you. John Elbasan, 8 Belmont Court. Thank you for your time. So a couple things from our last conversation that came up. We're a township of common sense, and many of us are working parents, 2 family working parents, and we're trying to get these kids into our school districts in a safe and sound manner with good classroom ratios. So the question I have,
are you speaking to the agenda?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah. So the question I have is as follows, because a couple of things you brought up about the cost of the land relative to acquiring new land. So what I'd like to bring up, Mr. Board President, is one should ask themselves, if there's 65 acres of land that supposedly is pristine to be used for building premises, how did the developer not build on that land to begin with? How did they build on 2 other major lots of land for a major development, back to your point about cluster zoning, and not build on this supposedly pristine 65 acres of land? And the fact is that it's a non-contiguous zoning variance that they received from this township. Why did they receive that non-contiguous zoning benefit? They received it because the lots that the homes were built on are much smaller than they were supposed to be by our own municipal code. So New Jersey has a law for that, and it says that if you have non-contiguous land and a zoning and planning board approves this cluster variance, 3 separate parcels of land, well, one land can compensate for the other 2 pieces of land. And so what that triggers, believe it or not, in New Jersey statute law, is that the land is deemed open space because you've lost the space elsewhere that you were supposed to preserve, and you've put it now into the trust of this piece of land. And you know what really frustrates me as a common resident here is I pay quite a bit of money into my property taxes to protect open space. One of the reasons I live in Monroe is our charter says that 50% or more of our land is open space. So it is a bit disingenuous to say that there is some economic benefit to the Board of Education where there's an economic deficit on the other side of the equation. That's one. Two, the other issue that we have is that when you build on compromised land, FEMA and other state agencies require a higher rigor of building construction. So your estimates for building need to be adjusted if you're allowed to build on this land to begin with, because now you have to compensate for that soil composition, you have to compensate for the wetlands nearby, you have to compensate for FEMA's floodplains that exist on this property. That's two. Three, you mentioned studies. We live in a very information-driven age. I could now go on, and everyone in this township can go on GIS. It's a state-sponsored website that overlays all the floodplains, all the soil compositions, and I got to tell you, the land that the building of Applegarth School sits on is pristine. There is no encumbrances. The footings that sit behind this high school are pristine. They should be built. And waiting for some perfect, elaborate, concocted referendum to build is inexcusable. And it will not be tolerated in this township anymore. I can assure you that. There is an activist movement in this township, and this board should take advantage of that movement.
Thank you, Ms. Alverson. Anyone else from the public to address the agenda? Okay, not seeing, Mr. Pelor? Change your mind?
No, I haven't changed my mind. I just want to make one point, actually, not a question, it'll be easy. This is not us against versus them or anything like this. This is a problem community-wide. I just fail to understand why we cannot discuss with the council on what we're talking about and make a reasonable investment. And also, there's tremendous resources in the township that you should be tapping into. This is my town. This is our town. We're all here to help. So how can we bring the community together to solve the problem? The problem is real. We got kids coming in with no classrooms, and the student-teacher ratio is going tremendously high. We got to change that. So tell us how we can help you. Let's try to find a solution together rather than going back and forth. So is there a liaison from the Board of Education? I know the answer. To the council, where there's a constant conversation that takes place back and forth so that everybody's on the same page, rather than hearing somebody saying yes on some instances and then going back and saying no, and we keep spending money on doing studies.
Mr. Boyle, I just want to say, I appreciate what you said, but I'm asking these comments and questions are supposed to be pertained to the agenda. That would have been more suitable for the second public sector.
All right. I guess I'm
you.
a rookie at this.
Anyone else from the public? Seeing no one from the public, we can move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to make mention that our high school, once again, another report came out, but it placed us as 100 out of 371 high schools in New Jersey for the best ELL Park scores from 2016, from last year. That we placed higher than Princeton High School, West Windsor High School, North and South, Livingston High School, and North Brunswick High School. So just a congratulations to the students, teachers, parents, yes, leadership team, and the Board of Education for supporting our schools. Thank you. I attended one of the many presentations on the presidential election at the middle school, and I think the students did an outstanding job on researching, along with the help of their teachers, of course, and the administration, researching the 4 different presidential candidates, the vice presidents. They even had kids portraying the Secret Service. They did a very, very nice job explaining the Electoral College. And I just want to commend again all the students and the teachers for that. It's good to see our students gain that kind of education and knowledge of the whole election process. There was also a concern from a number of people that, post-election, would we see any problems? Would we, hear of anything? Some of the protests, some of the things that we have heard that have occurred on some university campuses and in other places. and we'll always be vigilant and monitoring the situation. But I did meet with a group of middle school and high school students today who are part of the Student Liaison Committee, and they reported, according to them, that really other than some social media between the kids of, oh, my party won or your party, your party lost, that there hasn't been any mean or vicious comments toward one another. And I, hopefully we won't see any of that. Certainly want to commend our students. Yes, sometimes students, just as adults, make some poor decisions, but I would say that the high percentage, a high majority of students that I come in contact with are mannerly, they're nice to one another. Even the student liaison group today, when they come in, they're helping one another. This is routine for them. It's really nice to see the behavior, the overall behavior of our students and how they treat one another and how they interact and treat the adults. With the agenda, I just wanted to make note to the board that item J under Mr. Gorsy's section actually is the approval of the online board agenda software. That is something that the board had made a goal of. The people that input the data, the secretaries and others, we previewed several companies, and we found this company to be something that we feel would be very user-friendly for the board and also be very organized and would be user-friendly for the people who have to input all the data. So if the board should desire to move ahead with that, we would set up the training in January at the first January board meeting, the full meeting, not the reorganization meeting, the full meeting. And normally the curriculum committee meets before the board, but the January meeting, the curriculum committee routinely does not meet at that time. So that could be a good time for training, maybe from 6 to 7, if the board would so desire. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. With that, Mr. President, I would like to recommend the personnel items A through V. Full board.
Second.
You have a second? Any discussion? Oh, did I hear a question over there?
I just want to make sure I'm on the right.
Okay, take a moment.
A through,
V, I believe.
V is in Victor.
we're not stopping at 14? Or are we going to the board, not board action, right?
No, not board action. That's the next, yes.
Okay, second then. No discussion.
Okay, no discussion. Mr. Gorski, we can vote.
Mrs. Arminio.
Yes.
Mr. Braverman. Mrs. DeMayo.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz. Mr. Nostine.
Yes.
Mrs. Carino.
Yes.
Mr. Ryback.
Yes.
Mr. Russo.
Yes.
And Mr. Rutsky.
Yes.
Mr. Board President, motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, under board action, I would like to recommend the board approval for items A through J.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes, I have a question about E on page 13, the bylaw on nepotism. You weren't here at the last meeting, but it was on the agenda for the last meeting for first reading, and there was some comments and suggestions by board members that we return this to the policy committee for a second review. And I don't believe there's been a policy meeting since we had the last committee meeting, the last Board of Education meeting.
Yeah, so many of you, you want to answer that?
Is there a question?
Well,
That's the question.
the question.
There hasn't been, so it is the requests of change have not been reviewed, so it hasn't been. So this policy stands as it was presented for the first reading. Again, policies are fluid. There was a time frame that we just couldn't get the meeting together, so.
Let me just be clear. So are we going to put this back into the policy?
No, it was not reviewed. Again, it can be in the future, but
Oh, so
the
this is
way
the first-
this is the second reading.
Second reading?
Right.
but there was a directive by the Board of Education to revisit this bylaw before we put it on the agenda again, and therefore I'm going to be not supporting this because I feel that if there's a directive from the board, this looks like we're being not very transparent, where we're just putting it on the board.
Like to table it, we could table it for next.
All right, why don't we do that?
Make a motion to
Make a
table it,
motion to
Kat.
table it,
Okay.
Mrs. Kalapana.
Then I make a motion that we table bylaw 0142.1, nepotism, until after it has been reviewed by the policy committee.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have to, roll call vote.
Motion is to table letter E on page 13. Mrs. Arminio.
Yes.
Mr. Braverman. Mrs. DeMayo.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Recuse.
So noted. Mrs. Kolpanowicz.
Yes.
Mr. Nostine. Mrs. Carino.
No.
Mr. Ryback.
Yes.
Mr. Russo. And Mr. Rutsky. Mr. Board President, motion to table E has passed.
Thank you, Ms. Kalapana. Thank you, Ms. Arminio, for clarifying that for us. Appreciate that. And we can go ahead now. The rest of it, the board action? We have to take a vote on it, right?
Yeah, I think we have to take a vote on it.
Okay, the motion on the floor is board action items A through J with the exception of E, which has been tabled. Mrs. Arminio.
Yes.
Mr. Braverman. Mrs. DeMayo.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mrs. Kolpanowicz.
Yes.
Mr. Nostine.
Yes.
Mrs. Carino.
Yes.
Mr. Ryback.
Yes.
Mr. Russo. And Mr. Rutsky.
So I abstain on everything up to, but then I vote yes for I and J.
So noted. Thank you. Mr. Board President, board action items A through J with the exception of E has passed.
Okay, I think we're up to the business administrator's report.
Yes, sir.
Get it, I might as well leave it there.
Thank you. Board President and members of the Monroe Township Board of Education, it is recommended that board action items A through K be approved by consent. Roll call.
Second.
Discussion? Mr. Braverman?
Prior to hearing about the 65 acres, I suggested we build behind Applegarth, put an addition on Oak Tree, and get going with the high school. I was very uncomfortable at last night's meeting. I do think we're shoveling money against the tide. I always feel like I'm blowing in the wind with this board. I don't understand what's so important about that 65 acres. We should be spending the same money for the architects to do the work that we have to do. The properties have already been approved. They're ours. I just don't understand what's going on. I mean, we were pushed to do this high school here. I voted against it at that time. The property that we originally wanted, they put a senior center on, which would have been much nicer for this school and would have been twice the size for half the price. So I just don't understand why you keep pushing for the 65 acres. So I'll probably be voting against it. It's just, you know, I'm blowing in the wind, and give it some thought.
We're with you. We're blowing in the wind. We're with you.
Thank you. I ask the audience to please not shout out, okay? They didn't even do it during the presidential debate, so we can't do it here either.
Maybe we should have a presidential debate on this level.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Calvin.
So a couple things. I know we've done it in the past. We've done a lot of this work when we don't own the land. We've been successful at doing some very innovative things, and this building is absolutely living proof of it. What's setting this process a little different than the other one is the fact that, from my perspective, and this is just me speaking, this Board of Ed is assuming the entire risk, because it was brought up earlier about risk, right? And we try and do your due diligence, you try and do as best you possibly can, but it seems to me as the board here, us, we're assuming the entire risk here. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because we went along with good faith that that letter of intent, just like the land, was a done deal, right? And then you start thinking about, you follow the money. You think about, well, why wouldn't they give us the letter of intent when they're so adamant, or at least the mayor is so adamant, just the mayor. And this problem is, these are conversations that are being had between the administration. Yet our forum is out here in the public, on TV, right? We're all out here talking about it, right? But when you're talking with the administration, you know, they can deny everything that these conversations were had, right? Because we are assuming the entire risk here. We're laying out the money to look at the land. We're doing all this stuff up front. And if it turns out that it's really not suitable or billable, well, they're not giving you the letter of intent because they can't. They don't own the land, so they can't tell you that they're giving it to you because they don't own it. So in effect, Toll Brothers, in theory, could walk away from this whole thing and only the Board of Ed is left holding the bag. Just something to think about as you move forward, because whatever happens with this land is going to happen with this land, whether it's good or it's bad. All I'm saying is, we have to be very cognizant about when we think about looking at different properties and truly weigh the ultimate cost, because it's not just, you know, laying out money for land, because you get what you pay for. This land was different. This was publicly owned land. It was a park. It was owned by the park for eons. It wasn't private land that was owned by somebody who, as mentioned earlier, because of because of land swaps or what have you, it came up to be available for us, right? So just think smartly as you move forward in time. That's all.
Well taken. Mr. Notstein?
Yeah, just a couple things. A couple people brought up tonight that they're kind of under the impression that we're not really doing anything else. Will someone from the administration please help me to understand what I heard last night at the committee meetings that basically said we are doing something else. We are moving in a multifaceted approach. I know Mr. Tay gave a very detailed synopsis of what's going on with the high school. I think Mr. Poy said that we should be looking at that. And it is my understanding as a board member that we are. Could someone from the administration please help the public to understand that we're not just focusing on 65 acres. We are doing a multi-pronged attack on this huge issue.
Sure, we can both actually.
You want to talk? You want to start?
Okay, so Mr. Notstein, a good question, and Mr. Tay did present that last night, that he has been working with the architect for the high school in particular, looking at that. He had the architect at the high school, I believe it was yesterday. We've already gone to South Brunswick because their layout of the high school is very similar to ours. We did that last summer to look at what the addition would look like behind the high school, to look at the hallways. We found out what worked, what didn't work in South Brunswick. We wanted to make sure that we didn't repeat the same mistakes. So that has been moving forward, looking at this building here. We were going on the recommendations of the Student Growth Advisory Committee to go out for one referendum. But having said that, nothing is written in stone. So we have to be flexible. We've listened to people that has been recommended more than once that maybe we should go out for multiple referendums. Part of it is, what will the taxpayers be willing to bear? Are they willing to bear a referendum now, another one in 5 years? So that's something that certainly has to be considered, because this township, I know I've only been here a little over a year, but I know the history. There's been a number of referendums since, I believe, 1990, and there's been an incredible growth in this town, and the township has supported that through a number of years. But that is a consideration for that. Regarding all the other schools, again, between the demographer and the architect, looking at what we have at each school. Where is the location? How long would the bus ride be for students? Is it centrally located? So the 65 acres, the reason why we are asking for us to finish the process is it's a due diligence question in my mind. The board approved us looking at that 65 acres because we didn't know. We would have to do this with any plot of land to see whether it's, if it's wetlands or not wetlands. The mayor has assured us that it's just a matter of time that they would give the land to us. But if we do the study and it's not really worth our effort, or that the cost would outweigh us having the land, then it's not worth us to take the land either. And that has been discussed. I can't speak for the communication between the mayor and the town council, but my contact has been, or I should say our contact has been with the mayor as the mayor of a municipality, of a township. The land behind the middle school, we looked at that, we drove around, we looked at that area, we consulted with Mr. Tagg from previous studies, and as Mr. Gorski has already alluded, a lot of that land is wet and it might not really suit our purposes. We've also discussed the idea of building a 5-6 behind the middle school, and again, while everything is on the table, because we want to explore all options, that puts a large number of students in that area, which is already between the high school and the middle school. Is it a possibility? Sure, it could be. But we would have to study and see how much of that land is usable, what would be the cost of taking that field, leveling it, how much room behind it. So as with any project, it's a process. Building onto the other schools, Applegarth has always been on the table to either build behind it or to raise Applegarth. It was decided way back with the Student Growth Advisory Committee to put Applegarth off for right now because we thought this 65 acres was usable, and it seemed to fit the purpose of an elementary and middle and a high school. That's what we presented to the community. That's what we sent out information for between the Falcon Flyer, between board meetings. We've been totally transparent with that. At the same time, it's a process. You have to see it through. At the same time, we've been working to explore what our other options are. But we also feel responsible to not ask the board to continually approve, well, let's pay for this, let's pay for that. Let's see what this one's worth first. It's very frustrating for us as well. I wish this could have been done 6 months ago or even longer. But we have to get through the process. We start the environmental study, they come back to us, well, the EPA says there could be turtles in that area. You have to study that. Okay, so then we have to come back to the board and we seek and move in that direction. But we certainly have been looking at all the options. We're even, the land search, 5-6 building. If we can find suitable for a 5-6 building that would be centrally located so that students won't be on the bus that long and it would address the needs, that certainly could solve our problem. Keeping the 6th grade in our elementary schools, that is also a possibility. We looked at that, we discussed that. Part of what we look at is some of our buildings are more suitable and there's some land around some buildings, but not all. There is also the chance of, as you start working on some of our older buildings, that there could be other issues, bringing them up to code. There's a lot of things to consider. We've had these conversations. I certainly appreciate the feedback that I've heard from the community tonight. Mr. Norton, I can't thank you enough for bringing up that question because it seems to be the perception that we are sitting here not doing anything when the reality is that this is a daily concern of ours. I drive by the building at 33 in Applegarth every day just to see where they are, where are they at now. We're looking at a demographer to go back because no one legally has to come, no developer has to come and say, we're starting a building now, or we're putting this in here, or we're going to change this from this bedroom to that bedroom. So we have to constantly explore all those things. I can empathize with the community on how frustrated you must be. And I respectfully ask that you understand that we hear you and we understand that frustration. And I feel we are doing everything possible to try to come up with solutions and try to come up with answers. You know, we're relying on, and we have to rely on, experts. You know, I consider Mr. Tagg an expert. He has been here for all the different building projects and the referendums. Some of our board members have been here and certainly offer us valuable advice. We rely on experts such as environmental engineers or whatever the title is. I'm not calling them the correct name. We rely on architects. We rely on demographers. You know, that's why we're going back and getting a revised demographic study. I can only ask, to respectfully ask, that you understand how much this weighs on our mind. And we want the people in the community to be happy. We want people to understand. When we heard about 65 acres, and I talked to the superintendent in North Brunswick, and he told me of the millions that they're spending to buy land, I thought, the community's going to be thrilled. What a great partnership between the mayor, the township, town council, and the school district. Because there's a lot of partnerships, a lot of things that occur between the town and the school district that maybe aren't mentioned. It seems to be the negatives a lot of times that we focus on, but there's a lot of things, including how they recognize our students sometimes at council meetings, how they call us up and say, hey, can we do this for you? Oh, you need more land for transportation for your bus garage. You know what? We have some land over here that maybe you guys can use for a bus garage. That stuff's not brought up. But there is a cooperation, there is a cooperative attitude, at least from my point of view. And I understand that I haven't been here for years and years and years. I understand that. But I can only tell you what I see. So that's what we're doing. We're continuing to do that. We appreciate the board's support in that, in allowing us to move in other directions, to explore all of the options. There's been some great ideas mentioned tonight. A lot of the ideas have been discussed in the Student Growth Advisory Committee, and that's okay. We'll continue to look at them. If somebody can come forth, if we thought it would make sense to get another committee together to say, let's explore this again, I'd be willing to do it. I certainly put out time, as all of us did, to meet at night and to discuss this and to bring the community into the process. So we certainly want that. It's a process. It's not easy. It's long. It's frustrating. But we are aware of that. Mr. Gorski, please add to that, if you could.
Thank you. With respect to that, because the letter of intent now is not forthcoming according to the mayor, it will not be considered by council. Respectfully to the Board of Education members, without numbers 5, 6, 7, and 8, which are on my report being approved by tonight, administration will not have the authority to conduct the habitat study that has a very short window of opportunity left, will not be able to engage in a completed wetland study with the engineer because that's partially dependent upon the habitat study. We will not be able to use the architect for referendum planning because the architect of record fee structure is not inclusive of referendum costs, which are much more material. And we would not be able to update the demographic study to determine not only the new number of students as of October 15th to coincide with the ASSA fall report, but also to determine where they are located throughout the town so that when we're making important considerations for adding on to buildings, if that should be part of our plan, we will know how many students are being affected in those various attendance zones. So without 5, 6, 7, and 8, we're going to have a very ill-afforded pause in this referendum process because, again, we do not have the authority to continue to explore those important options at this time.
Thank you both for your very concise answers. I have some other questions, Mr. Board President. I don't want to give up my time yet. With regards to item 5, the letter of intent, I was very concerned when we initially did this. I think we did it at Finance, and I really was kind of insistent upon this letter of intent at the Finance Committee, and I believe that's why it made it into the resolution, and that's why this board approved that resolution last meeting. My question, I guess, to the administration that's met with the mayor, did he give any reason why that he is not giving us this letter of intent?
I can answer that. And The answer is no. We'd have to, I think, present that question to the town. All we were told is that it is not on the agenda for the town council and will not be.
So he gave no indication of the reasoning?
No. That's a question for them, for the town.
Okay, I also have a question regarding my colleague, Mr. Rutsky's asterisks. If Mr. Gorski could just walk me through this on items 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 6 and 7, if you could tell me how that correlates to page 20, items 1 through 4.
Prior to each meeting, the agenda and all of its consent items are thoroughly reviewed by Dr. Alvick, by our board attorney, and me. And our board attorney feels specifically with the asterisk items on page 15 and 16 that the Jamesburg representative would be able to vote on those. If you would like, we could certainly follow up with her tomorrow and engage a conversation of what her rationale was for approving those. But they were specifically approved for the Jamesburg vote.
Okay, well, I take that under protest because I can't see how any of these, I actually thought that the asterisks were misplaced. Why would he be voting on tiny tots therapy? I'm a little confused about that in particular, and also about the pre-referendum planning, since this has absolutely nothing to do with the high school, but that's just me. Thank you very much. I'm done.
Russo?
No, I just wanted to say, as you know, I wasn't here for the tennis court deal, and that didn't seem to work out too well. And now we have this land deal, 65 acres, and basically, as Lou said, we have all the risk on us, and we're being asked to trust. What I wanted to ask is, let's say this deal doesn't go through. We can't get the 65 acres. Let's say we can't get any land. What do we do then?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President. If the land, the 65 acres is not available, and if there is no other land in the township that is available, we certainly have, what we have discussed is building higher, which we would rather not do, but I mean, behind Applegarth, we were looking at around 900 to 1,000 elementary school students coming in. So behind Applegarth, you talk about what's the optimal number for an elementary school. There's no hard and fast figure, but we think somewhere in that 600 to 700 range. And then, again, where is it located in relation to where all the homes are being built or the new homes are being built? So we were looking at, on that 65 acres, building an elementary school to possibly hold up to 900 students, elementary. If we build behind Applegarth, I don't know if we have the amount of land to do that. It could be a possibility. The other possibility that we could look at would be, let's keep the sixth grade in the three, possibly the 3 out of the 6 elementary schools that currently have fifth grade, and possibly do additions on to those schools to accommodate that, possibly move around. It would impact all of our schools in how we would have to reconfigure, especially when you get into the younger grades with kindergarten, which schools have bathrooms for, there's regulations with that, with having bathrooms in the classrooms. But it's certainly something we would have to look at. It never seemed to be our best option to just build onto our schools. It certainly was an option, but it didn't seem to be the best option. The demographic studies that we have go out further than 10 years. We're restricted by the state, and we also thought common sense would lead us to, you don't want to predict too far out because the economy could impact housing. There's so many different factors that could impact housing. So, we have to be considerate of that, but if we just build onto our schools that we have, the predictions from the original demographic report indicate that the building's going to continue for 15 to 20 years. So we thought if we had, again, that land, that would offer more flexibility. In the future, 5, 10 years down the line, I certainly wouldn't want, I don't think any of the board members would want somebody coming back and say, why did the board, the superintendent, the business, everybody, why didn't they think? Why didn't they look at, they had the demographic report. So we try to take all those things into consideration. But certainly we're going to do what we need to do to try to rectify this situation we're in. We're looking at, we think we can get through another year without adding any trailers, without doing anything like that. We can't predict too much further ahead than that. But certainly we're trying to move this process along as quickly as we can.
So let's say, for example, we don't get the 65 acres.
Right.
And we can't find any land on the market.
Yes.
Can we tap into the inventory of the open space land, which is already paid for by the taxpayers? Is that possible to look at that inventory?
I don't believe legally that we're allowed to use open space for putting any kind of facility on, like, school, any kind of a building on. I'm pretty sure, Mr. Arminio's nodding and Mr. Braber nodding. I'm pretty sure that's legally we can't do that.
It seems to me then the best thing to do is maybe start looking at building on existing properties.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But also, if there were land available, that we could do that in addition to building onto existing properties, that's also another solution, which is why we want to do the land search at the same time that we're looking at building onto our current buildings.
And doing the land search means hiring a company.
My understanding is that it's done on a contingency basis, meaning that we don't pay for it until land is acquired.
And we can also put out a public notice?
Public notice for land.
Advised against that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we get somebody that does a land search, they're well, that's their expertise. They know where to look, they know which land might be available for purchase that might not be. I think it would be in our best interest to use an expert in that area.
Because, I mean, looking at what we have to vote on, based on the history of dealing with, the same entities that are making this offer, it is a very risky one.
It is, but if I could answer, the risk that we've already invested money to look at this land. So our risk is to finish the process to see if the land is usable. That's all we're asking, is to finish it, and then we'll know for sure whether there's land available or not available. If it's determined, even if the land is available, let's say that we get the report back and they say, you have room there to build a school. And we look at all the other factors, and it seems that the space that's available for that school, or maybe other costs that could be associated with that, might not be worth it for the school district and the Board of Education to pursue. It doesn't cost us anything to walk away from it. We haven't paid anything for the land. We're not committed to the land. This is only a probe, I guess, for lack of a better term, to see, is this, a viable piece of property that we can build onto. But there's no commitment to the board that I'm aware of that says that we have to take the land.
I understand. I'm just going by the history.
Sure.
Ms. Arminio?
Okay. Just on number 5, the pre-referendum planning, number 5 is solely specific to the Block 6, Lot 5.21. Is that correct? The church
Yes.
land? Okay. I just have to make a couple comments regarding it. First of all, Oak Tree School was built under the same cluster zone provision as what we are discussing now on Church Road. So if everybody's satisfied with the way Oak Tree has been built and constructed and placed and located, that was under the same cluster zone provision as Church. So that's one issue. Also, and I'm not saying I agree with this, but what I'm saying is these are again, historic precedents. The township's interpretation of cluster zone and how to use it, how to convey the property, instead of open space as land for municipal use. Again, it's precedented in this town. I have, over the years, been very much against it. And at every meeting that I've attended, planning and zoning, I have said that it should be conveyed in as open space. It has not. No one else, very few people, Mr. Notstein is usually there. We have offered our opposition to that. However, the rest of the community hasn't been there, and the township has gone forward with their interpretation of the cluster zone provision by accepting the land as municipal use. So we may be stuck with that, like I said, whether I approve of that or not. So that's the historic interpretation of that. I also attended the most recent Township Council meeting, and I was hoping that there was a resolution on the council agenda, and I must tell you that I was very disappointed that members of the public who were concerned about these 65 acres were not in attendance. We've had discussions with the community about where the decisions at this point are lying, and unfortunately, again, without public participation in these things, we come to an evening like this where we're still going around and around. And Mr. Kaufman mentioned that the property is privately owned. At this point, he may be correct under the definition of that, but the builder's agreement with the township controls the site plan, and that says that the township is going to be given the property under the agreement, under a valuable consideration that the way the site was approved. So while it is still in the hands of the developer, I believe that contractually, and again, I'm not an attorney, but the way these things have seemed to play out, contractually, the township is going to get this land because the rest of the development and the approvals have, and the construction has been made. So my point is that I don't think it's particularly private at this point. I think the township is pretty much guaranteed under, again, their interpretation of the cluster zone provisions and the fact that these properties have already been built, that land is pretty clearly going to go to the township. Now, why it is not a letter of interpretation, and again, not being an attorney, but I think that a letter of interpretation would have been prudent and would have been decent of the township to put forward, whether it be the mayor or the council. I mean, that's unfortunate. So I see this as a dilemma of diverse opinions and a lot of various solutions. We have tried over the last year or so. I mean, Mr. Kozak is correct. There has been a discussion at almost every meeting. There have been deliberations. I think there isn't anybody who isn't doing due diligence, including the people who disagree with me and that I disagree with, in terms of what we know. We know what the need is. We have different avenues and options. And in some cases, the same people who are saying we're not moving fast enough are saying we're moving too fast on certain issues. We can't have it both ways. We are doing both. We are trying to move fast in the areas, and in my opinion, we are trying to move fast in the areas we can move forward with, and we are doing due diligence in the areas we must be diligent with. Yes, we're expending a certain amount of money, but it's not the same amount as trying to take an open space provision where there are really encumbrances on the property. So I'm disappointed that we don't have this letter of interpretation, but I do believe that we are actually doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing and being responsible stewards of both the money and the process. So I'll see how, I still haven't decided how to vote on number 5. But that's
Thank you.
my position.
Any other board member? Braverman.
I think it would have been more interesting had we been given all the options, analyzed all the options, and then proceeded to vote on which options we thought we should pursue.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. Something to what Michelle said. I also think that we can't be penny wise and pound foolish. And I think that goes to what the last part of what you said. That's just a statement. The second thing, I think we need to explain, especially to me as a non-educator and to the public, what happened. You talked about an elementary school optimally is at 700 kids. What happens in an elementary school when we go above 700 kids? That, you're talking about first and second and third graders. I mean, that's not ideal. And what, can you please expound upon what happens?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no hard and fast rule. There's no solid research that I'm aware of that says this is the optimal size for an elementary school. What I'm basing that on is looking at what most elementary schools, how much they house. Now, I know Dr. Alvick and I have had this discussion that we had up to, I think, 1,000 students at Brookside and Barclay Brook?
Just Brookside.
Just Brookside.
When I started.
Right. So could we go to 1,000? Sure. Yeah, we could. Is it, if we have the option without it costing any more, if we have that flexibility to have less than 1,000 students in an elementary school, I think that would be preferred, but not at the expense of.
But what I'm asking is, when you have 1,000 kids in an elementary school, how does that impact their learning, their development, their how they're being taught, their safety?
Yeah, I would like to. I think Dr. Alvick, I'd like to hand that over to her.
I mean, I think.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good question.
When I began as the principal at Brookside School, we had over 1,000 students in the school. It was grades 3 through 6 at the time. That was when 6th grade was still in the elementary school. Because of the size of Brookside, the 4th and 5th grade students were out in trailers. The problem comes in, it doesn't come in with the education that students are getting in their general education classroom, because the whole idea is to keep those class sizes at an optimal level for the teachers. The problem comes in more with the core facilities, getting the students through the cafeteria, through the lunch line, having enough time in the daily schedule for students to have gym class without having 3 classes in the gym. There are 35 periods a week where students could be in the library. If you have more than 35 sections, one of those classes is not having library in the library that week. They're having it in their classroom. So it's looking more at those core facilities than what's happening in the classroom.
Thank you.
Great answer.
But that was an overcrowded school. If we're building a school that will contain the 1,000 students, we would make accommodations for those other activities. And when a teacher closes the door, the learning goes on.
I understand that, but you still have to accommodate all those extra buses, and it's not, it's not.
I want to try and avoid this cross conversation. Certainly the comments are well taken. You can talk later. Any other board member? Let me just take my turn if I can. To the community, we're part of the community. We're community members, we're volunteers. We want what's best for this community as well. We feel your pain, and you could see even amongst us, there's concerns with everything. But yet we have the charge to do what's best for this school system and community. In thinking about this 65 acres, to use the term Ms. Arminio said, due diligence, if we walked away from it, and let's say down the road found out that it was very buildable, and yet we just spent millions of dollars on some property, how are we going to account to all the other taxpayers that aren't here right now? We realize the ones that are here basically live close to that community, I'm sure most of you, but that's neither here nor there. You have one point of view, but there's a lot of other point of views out there, and I think we have to be accountable to them. So we need to find out, is it doable to build schools there? At the same time, that's why that's important, to rescind that letter of intent, because if we don't rescind that letter of intent, we'll never know if that property is buildable. And I think that would be preventing us from doing our due diligence as a board. At the same time, we're asking the board to approve other measures because we know time is a factor. We have to find out if these other schools can be expanded, how much. You know, it's nice to sit here and say, we could do this and we can do that. No, we need professional opinions to determine if we can do this and we can do that. We need architects and we need engineers. We have to have the professional's opinion. We can't do it based on hearsay or, you know, just our opinion. It has to be a professional opinion. Otherwise, it's not going to fly. So I have to, you know, ask the board, when you're thinking about all these resolutions, think about that we need to move in multiple directions because we're under pressure. The time is a factor. Dr. Kosak correctly said these kids are coming. All of us know that. They're here and more will be coming. We need to respond to this growth, and we need to do it with a knowledge, with a good knowledge base, so that we can provide the proper environment for these students and consider taxpayers as well, because we're all here together in the community. Mr. Pelori alluded to that. I couldn't agree with him more. We're all part of this community. We're in this together. You need to understand that this board is trying to do the best possible thing for this community, whether we agree on certain things or not. The intent is to do the best thing for this community. That being said, I think we're ready for...
I have one question. Very quickly.
Sure.
I have, and I'll let the community know this, I wanted to vote no on number 5. However, after hearing some of the community members and hearing some good ideas about whether we get verbal commitments or nonverbal commitments, can we, in addition to this number 5, can we put something forward like a resolution, a request for the town council and the mayor to respond to us as to what their intentions are with the land in writing, so we have something that, and I just thought of this, so I'm sorry, it's not something that I had a preconceived idea. I got it from the conversation and the deliberation, that we could actually, look, we're asking the state, we're asking the state to help us with funds. Let's ask the municipality to give us an idea, because I think we don't want.
By the way, I don't want to take away from what you said,
I'm
but
done.
you gave me an idea. As long as we're talking about the state, we need impact fees. If we had impact fees, a lot of this would be taken care of. And that's something down the line that we have to think about when we deal with our state legislators. Let me ask, Mr. Gorski, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, with regard to Ms. Arminio's comments, if directed by administration, we'll be more than happy to send a letter to the mayor asking and inquiring in writing as to their intent
Mayor and the council?
to the transfer of the land. The mayor has indicated to us before he would prefer the correspondence begin with him. So that's why I would suggest to go to the mayor first. He took offense to before when we sent something right to the council.
You know, I understand that, Mr. Gorski, but I think for Ms. Arminio that if it was copied to the council president and to the mayor.
I would be satisfied, and I think the public would be satisfied with that as well.
And that is what the letter of intent was all along. It was a written request of the township's intent to transfer the land.
But
And
if we were to send that out tomorrow, if this is passed tonight, I think certainly something that it can't hurt to
But
ask.
wait, we actually sent a letter of intent.
yes, we actually drafted a letter of intent.
And
It was
we didn't
reviewed
get
by
a
both attorneys, the boards and the townships.
Okay.
It was never presented to the council, and then it was stopped.
So like to answer one of our, I think it was Ms. Skirby's thing, have we asked the council and have we asked the mayor? Yes, the answer to that was yes.
Letter of intent was drafted,
Okay.
went through the attorneys
So we
and
don't
did go
have
there.
to, I mean, they did not form, did we ask them to respond in writing?
Yes.
Yes.
That's unfortunate. Okay. I don't know if a second one is necessary.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, asked and answered. Next.
Well, it wasn't answered.
Because that was the intent of the letter of the intent, right? Okay.
They
Just to
answered
be
by
clear.
not answering.
Right.
That's an answer.
Well, that's,
All right, we can vote.
Okay, we're voting on board action items A through K under the Business Administrator's Report. Motion made by Mr. Nostine, seconded by Mrs. Koloponowicz. Mrs. Arminio.
yes on everything, but I am compelled to vote no on 5. Please don't, it's not worth.
Folks, I have to ask you to please refrain from commenting, whether applauding or verbal.
Mr. Braverman.
No on A5, yes on the rest.
Mrs. DeMayo.
Yes on all.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Yes.
Mr. Nostine.
Yes to all except item 5, which I vote no.
Mrs. Carino.
Yes.
Mr. Ryback.
Yes.
Mr. Russo.
Yeah, I'm very reluctant, but due to the urgency and the need to move ahead, I'm going to vote yes.
And Mr. Rutsky.
So I am going to vote yes, and let me give you my list of those that I'm abstaining from. So A1, I abstain out of respect to Mr. Nostine. I'm gonna abstain from number A3 because of the tiny tots, probably not taking care
You don't know.
of students. I will abstain from A4 because it's the middle school. I will abstain from letter B, letter C, letter G, and letter K. That's my vote. You have that, or you want me to repeat it? I'm sorry.
No, this was the.
It's all spread out.
I have it. Mr. Ryback, motion passes.
Okay, is there anything else in your report?
That concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And we can move to the Board President's report. To change the tone of the meeting a little bit, I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate Patty Lang, Ken Chiarella on their election to the board. I'd also like to congratulate Michelle Arminio for her re-election as well. I have to also thank Mr. Notstein, Mr. Poy, and Mr. Pelori for stepping up and volunteering to run for a position on this Board of Education. Mr. Kaufman, we won't forget about you and your many years of service. We'll do more next month. I'd like to talk a minute about state aid. It seems as though the national election has trumped the statewide discussions on state aid.
Did you just say that? Seriously?
I did. Our situation remains unchanged, and there's been no recent movement that I have seen on behalf of state legislators to correct the inequities. In order to better facilitate some action, we will be updating a letter which is currently on our website. This letter can be copied and sent out to legislators, governor and education commissioner, and contact information will be provided. We need the public to help us in this matter as politicians see potential votes and respond. Numbers matter. We're also willing to visit our active adult communities and our other community groups to explain our state aid predicament and answer questions. If you're interested, please get in touch with the superintendent's office. Contact information is on our website, and make sure you go to the Monroe Township Schools, Middlesex County. I don't know, Dr. Kosak, did you want to add something to that about the meeting? Being called to meetings?
For the state aid?
Yeah, for the state aid.
No, I think,
Enough,
I think-
okay.
yeah, I think you
Enough
said it well.
Okay. Now we can move to the other Board of Education business. Anybody?
Yeah, I'll just give you one.
Okay, Mr. Cal.
Only because I have to, and I only got one more shot at it. So, just a suggestion, because I know you guys are going to move in a few months to a new administration and a new board. You're going into a very difficult time. You know, you're heading into the wind, and it's going to be tough. When it comes to allowing the public to speak and allowing the Board of Education to speak to each other, I think it's important that the dialogue happens here, that you allow free dialogue between board members, allow them to speak, and most certainly allow the public to voice their frustrations and questions. Believe me when I tell you, the darkness is coming, right? It's coming. I assure you, you could write it down. And people get very frustrated when they feel the board is either limiting or restricting their ability to vent, right? So just, realize that there's two sides to this coin, and it's going to be a rough road, and just have to get along with everybody because we're all benefactors here. So,
All we're trying to do. Thank you, Lou. Appreciate that. Okay, any other Board of Education business? Now we can move to the public forum. I'd ask anyone in the public, you do not have to speak to the agenda. This is more open. You have the same 3 minutes to make your statement or ask your questions, 3 minutes or less if needed. I ask that you ask all your questions, and hopefully we'll be able to respond fully.
Prakash Parab again.
Hi.
I appreciate about the state aid. We want to understand how we can lobby and help y'all, okay? Without that, how you can be transparent to us so we know what way you're approaching so that we can participate as a community, talk to the legislators. If you want, we can plan and do, okay? So I appreciate how you can communicate to the community, okay? Second question is, I'm hearing from the friends, I have not seen, the maintenance of the middle school is not good. So I request one of the, as per the Hemant Patel, who spoke to me on that. So I would like y'all to look into it. One of the board member can go and see the facility. As per the mission, I read that safety of our children is very important, safety of the staff, everyone is important there. They have to be safe and healthy, okay? So I would like you all to look about the maintenance of the school, okay? We cannot save $100, but make sure that our schools are maintained well, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the public? Mr. Poy?
Once again, Doug Poy, 4 Tamarack Road. I'm just going to bring this up a second time because I do think it's a very viable proposal, and I do hope the board will give it serious consideration. And that is to building a 5-6 building because I think it would be less expensive than a middle school, to build a new middle school. I think also it would require that if you build a new elementary school, that it would be smaller because you would only have to accommodate grades K through 5 and not K through, K through 4 and not K through 5. And in terms of transportation, if that 5-6 building were built, and I think it doesn't have to be built behind the middle school, it can be built to the north of the middle school. If it were built there, then those children that come into the middle school for grades 7 and 8 could be on the same buses as the kids coming for 5 and 6. It would be centrally located, your transportation issues would be relatively simple, and I think you would have a buy-in from the entire community for something of that nature. Okay, on my second item, and this is really just, and I hope it won't be misunderstood, but I've looked through the agendas, I've looked through the minutes, I've looked through videos, and I think we need clarification on something that occurred this past summer at a special meeting of the Board of Education. I believe it was in July 27th, if I'm not mistaken. At that time, the board approved merit goals for our superintendent, and to those merit goals, there was bonus pay attached. I cannot find in the minutes, nor can I see in the video, any specific mention of what the bonuses would be if those merit goals are achieved, and I think the public is entitled to know that. I also think that whatever the goals are need to be clearly delineated, because at the meeting where they were approved, it says, as previously submitted. Well, when I looked back at what was previously submitted, I only saw 2 goals, and yet I think there were 3 goals. So I would appreciate it this evening if we could have a clarification on what are the 3 goals that this board approved for our superintendent to pursue and what amount of bonuses would be paid to the superintendent for the accomplishment of those goals. I think the public is entitled to that information, and it has not been directly forthcoming. Thank you.
Okay, so just to answer that, Mr. Poyen, as far as the amounts, the whole idea of the merit goal, and you were board president when I was hired as part of the contract, is something that Governor Christie put in place regarding merit goals. And it's very clearly regulated and delineated, and that is a superintendent is allowed to request, because there are salary caps, and in a lot of cases, salaries of other people in the district are now higher than the superintendents in a lot of school districts. The Governor Christie, when he put that into place, allowed for merit goals that don't count toward a superintendent's pension, but would allow a superintendent to achieve additional pay based on the successful completion of a merit goal. The superintendent's allowed to have up to 5 merit goals. They are negotiated between the superintendent and the Board of Ed. I can speak, I know there's legal parts that maybe I shouldn't speak about because it's contractual, but I want to be honest and I want to be transparent. So there are 3 of the merit goals. The state defines them as either quantitative or qualitative. Quantitative meaning you can get 3.3% of your salary in that amount. So it's a couple $1,000s per each quantitative goal. Qualitative, I believe off the top of my head, is 2.5%. So should that goal be completed, then that would be 2.5%, which again is somewhere in that, again, off the top of my head, I want to say around that $2,000 or $3,000 range. The goals are submitted to the board for approval. Because it is a contractual issue, you're right, it is done in closed session. I've been advised by the board attorney that we weren't disclosing them, but I certainly have no problem with talking to you about them. The goals also have to be approved by the county superintendent. They were approved by the county superintendent. They were approved by this Board of Education. At the completion of the goals, I have to show evidence of successfully completing the goals. The board, again, has to approve that, as well as the county superintendent has to approve it. It's very heavily regulated. My preference would not be to not have them at all, but that's just an opinion. The actual goals themselves, basically it's around student achievement, partnerships. I don't have the goals right in front of me, and I would like to at least consult with the board attorney before I put all of that out there, because originally it was decided to be put into closed session. So should the board attorney, give me that clearance, I certainly have no problems. I try to be transparent with everything I do here. And, my goal with merit goals, excuse not the unintended pun there, is certainly to improve either student academic achievement or opportunities for students with that.
Thank you.
Hi, John Elbasan, 8 Belmont Court. I just want to be brief, just a comment. I want to thank everyone for their deliberation tonight. They're earnest in reviewing all the facts you have in front of you. I think you're caught in a bit of a crosshair just between our municipal entity and obviously being the benevolent group that you are as the Board of Education. It's worth noting that this township has been successfully litigated against for unfair practices about real estate taxes and assessments in recent years. It's been successfully litigated against under Coach for affordable housing. It has been in the past successfully litigated against land deals. Ms. Arminio's point about cluster zoning, there is a divergence of opinion about what state law is and what past precedent has been in this township. And I think what Mr. Kaufman speaks of dark storms brewing, is that there will be another assessment of where the overreach of this township is, and it will be decided in the courts. And unfortunately, that's going to put us at a disadvantage of getting prudent results in our current school district with the land assets we have. So the trend is there. Those that have brought up the issues about the sincerity of the town, I would say this: if the town was truly sincere, like any title change of hand, they would have accepted title of that land. They would have cleared it for themselves, knowing what municipal use, if any, they could have had with that land, and benevolently, they would have then offered it to this township, this Board of Education, which is a separate entity from the municipality, and in turn, you would have not undergone the litany of questions you're going to get from myself and others until this matter is resolved. And that's as succinct as I can distill this issue. We must get clarity from the municipality. We have petitioned the municipality legal attorney, and several things are ongoing that I can't speak to. So I assure you there are pressure behind the scenes as well as with the developer. But it's unfortunate because, as Mr. Braverman has said, and Mr. Kozak has not witnessed at this township because of his new tenure, and I wish him complete success, because my children's success depends on Mr. Kozak's success, is that we've had in this township working ideas and plans that need to get started. And I strongly urge Mr. Gorski to rethink the strategy, kindly rethink the strategy, get prudent results as it relates to our high school, as it relates to Applegarth. And the last thing I'll say about Applegarth is, as I poll people, Applegarth, our community does not want Applegarth, that land and that building, to become just an administrative building. We feel that that's a decay of asset. We ask that that building be raised and be built immediately. And I'll leave with this. Mr. Kozak, from his own lips today, and it'll be in the minutes, and I'll ask for the Oprah, so it'll be there, and I'll leave with this, is that he said in a year's time, we'll be back to trailers. The referendum will still take 4 years to build buildings for us to move our kids in. Let's raise Applegarth. Let's build a quality school building. Let's build the extension of the high school. Let's get prudent results, and we can all be happy about that. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Stephen Manfrey, 12 Belmont Court. I just want to add to a few comments here. First and foremost, a lot has been made of the partnership between this board and the Township Council. And I have to say, you know, as an outsider looking in, it doesn't look like a very good partnership. And I'll ask the same question this week or at this meeting that I asked at last meeting. What sort of conversations are we having with the township with regards to the type of assets that they could make available to the Board of Education and to our kids? And does this 65-acre environmentally questionable parcel of land represent the best that they could do for our kids? And does it represent the best that we could ask of from our township? I'll leave that with you. There's also just been some comments about public participation. And I think I want to make clear that just because you haven't seen us maybe show up at some of those meetings, it doesn't mean that we're working diligently behind the scenes. And I would urge all the board members, apply some common sense to what you're seeing and hearing. A letter of intent has been sent. It hasn't been answered. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public? Not seeing anyone else, we can go to closed session resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Township of Monroe hereby moves to go into closed session in accordance with the Sunshine Law, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws 1975 NJSA 10:4-6 through 10:4-21 to discuss the following subjects: harassment, intimidation, and bullying. Following closed session action may be taken. The discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public at such time as the need for confidentiality no longer exists. Dr. Kosak, about how long do you think it might be?
5 minutes, 10 minutes.
5-10 minutes. Okay,
So
thank you.
moved.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on. We're not adjourned, so we can keep going. I see no one from the public. I think we can dispense with the public forum. Next scheduled meeting is Wednesday, December 14th at 7 p.m. I'd like a motion to adjourn.
Aye.
Yeah. Second. Okay, any discussion? All in
Wait a
favor?
minute, I vote no.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous?
Happy
No, one-
Thanksgiving,
one-
everyone.
one no.